Welcome to the show. I'm Antisocial. And this is the Antisocial Network.
I want to talk to her, but my face is up against the wall. Yeah, I think she wants to talk to me, but I'm antisociable. Yeah.
This week, we honor the memory of Jason Smith, CEO of Starburns Audio, and my friend and podcasting mentor. Thanks for tuning in. Hi listeners, I have a little bit different of an episode to share with you this week. My friend, mentor, and podcast daddy, as I called him, Jason Smith, passed away suddenly on March 26th. I met Jason in December on the podcasting app Stereo, and though I only knew him briefly, he was a huge influence on me and my podcast. In fact, if it wasn't for Jason, I'm not sure I would have ever actually launched. In the short time I was privileged to know him, Jason was always extremely generous with his time and knowledge. It was because of Jason's advice that I do a lot of the things I do, including how long my episodes are, which equipment and hosting services I use, and posting episodes on Wednesdays. When I finished my very first Antisocial Network episode, it was Jason who I emailed the file to and who I texted for advice. And it was because of Jason's urging and reassurance that my content was good enough to launch that I finally pulled the trigger. I'm truly indebted to him and his kindness, and I miss him tremendously. That's why this week, I'm posting an edit of the very first conversation I had with Jason on Stereo on December 15th, 2020, titled Podcasting for Beginners, in which we discuss his career, my aspirations, and lots in between. Even I didn't know how important and successful Jason was when I first spoke to him, so I cringed to hear myself interrupt him and excitedly talk over him several times. But in his infinite patience and generosity, Jason always let me be the center of the show. Because this talk was lifted from Stereo, where we both were multitasking and not using great equipment, the audio quality is lacking. But I want to honor Jason's memory, and it's all I have. If you want to listen to more of my talks with Jason, or more of Jason's talks with others on Stereo, you can still find them by downloading the Stereo app. Of course, Jason leaves behind a much larger legacy than just the group of creators he inspired during his few months on Stereo. Jason was the CEO of Starburns Audio and worked with creators from shows like Rick and Morty and My Favorite Murder, as well as hosting his own podcast with Cliff Dorfman called Stuck at Home. Because I feel like nothing I can say will truly illustrate the scope of Jason's influence, I'm going to read the statement posted by his network. We're heartbroken to report the sudden passing of Jason Smith, CEO of Starburns Audio, late on Friday night. We mourn with his family, his wife and daughter, the Starburns family, and the comedy and podcast communities at large. Jason was motivated by a desire to create and connect with people, to elevate unique and inclusive comedy voices and help them reach their audience. He lived this dream every day, and those who were with him on this journey are so grateful for the time we've spent. We just wanted more. To work with Jason was to be close with him. He brought joy and empathy to each of his many endeavors, along with a rare and unique dose of humor and optimism. While he would blush to be so lionized, we will honor his memory and his legacy by continuing to work on what we've built so far together. He's left some big crocs to fill, but the work continues. Our director of production and Jason's friend and colleague of 17 years, Land Romo, will be taking over the helm with our full support. A memorial fund has been set up for his family with an eye towards helping his daughter pay for college. Please join us in remembering this great man. With love, the Starburns Audio family. I'll have the link to that GoFundMe in my show notes. And with that said, on to the show. I'll be back next week with my regularly scheduled content. Thanks for listening.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. Just got off another live, so I'm ready to go.
I was listening. You are a busy bee today. Right
Yeah,
on.
so
Very excited about this talk today, and very excited to get going on this. Oh, what a day though! I am exhausted, and I don't know what it is.
It's something in retrograde.
I don't know.
Listeners, if you're new here, Jason over there on the left or the right, depending on who you swiped in on first, he is of Starburns Audio, and he's kind of a podcasting pro. He knows like the ins and the outs of the industry, how to get started. He's helped launch a bunch of podcasts. I'm a total noob. I'm an aspiring podcaster, and I'm here to ask Jason, the questions you guys all want to know. So if you guys also have questions, you can chime in down below in the comments. You can send us memos. You can ask your podcasting questions that I forget to ask. And hopefully we're going to cover some good stuff people want to know about.
Damn right. I'm excited.
Okay, so should we just dive right in?
Let's do it. Let's get in on it. Let's get it.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about like commute times and like peak length of a podcast and, how to stick to a good routine and sort of that thing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So analytics have, I want to quantify and qualify what I'm about to say based on analytics and how they're kind of evolved since, there's kind of a pre-COVID analytics, there's a post-COVID analytics. But in general, and this is still true for most of the United States, it's still going to be true again when everything when LA opens back up. But the peak times for podcast listening in the general public, we're not talking about people who are super fans. Like we don't talk about the outliers in this type of situation. We want to talk about the general mass of people. They listen to podcasts 2 times a day, when they're driving to work and when they're driving home. The average commute in the United States is about 26 minutes. And, I hear a lot of people say, well, not in LA, not in here, but the overall average is about 26 minutes. Used to take me an hour to commute to work. And that still lines up with what I'm saying. So what you want to do with a podcast is you want to kind of schedule it for that amount of time. So you either want to make about a 30-minute podcast so that you are the podcast that they're listening to on the way to a place, or you want to make an hour-long podcast where you're the person that gets them on the way there and the way back. Generally, they're not going to put you on a third time. So like if you're an hour and 15, that whole 15 minutes that you added to the end of it, nobody's going to hear it. And on top of that, what you have to also remember is the average person has about 7 podcasts they have in rotation. So if they move you into one of those 7 slots, you have to count. All right. You don't want to waste their time, and they're still, like I said, they're still going to ignore you if you go too long. So you have to kind of line up with their expectation of what a podcast is. And in general, we've moved way far away from the Adam Carolla and Joe Rogan days where that people are listening to a 3-hour podcast. Yeah. The people that still listen to those still do, obviously, but in general, people are more interested in the 30 to 45-minute podcast or an hour podcast. But because a lot of these interviews kind of all mold together, and unless the show has a very specific hook that'll tie you in for the whole hour, that hour-long podcast, again, is a little bit more about you, not about them. And when I'm saying them, the audience. So that's kind of where I like to keep everything is within that hour.
Nice. Interesting. I'm going to remember that statistic. The average podcast listener has 7 shows in their rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For a while, when we first started, so this has changed like a lot just right now. Sorry, I'm outside and there's a police car coming by, so I'm going to mute me for a sec.
Okay, no worries. ACAB, defund the police, listeners.
Damn right. So, I really enjoyed your last talk. It was that perfect blend of highbrow and like intelligent conversation mixed with some like good lowbrow jokes. Right in my wheelhouse. It's perfect podcast Starburns appropriate stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, all right. So I've been into podcasts since like 2012. I heard some podcast on, I think it was maybe NPR, and they were like, download the iHeartRadio app or download Stitcher or something like that. And that's where I discovered Mark Maron, and it was like pre-Joe Rogan. Mark Maron was the king of fucking podcasting in 2012. And yep. Dave Anthony threw a podcast festival, the first one that I knew of, in Santa Monica in 2012, and it was so fucking small. It was 3 days long. At the time, like, do you remember when Aisha Tyler had a podcast?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so she was there. Do you know Keith and the girl of?
Oh yeah, I actually sell ads for Keith and Hamda.
Yeah, I love Hemda. She's been my Instagram friend since I met her at this podcast festival, like in 2012. We met in an elevator at that podcast festival. Aisha Tyler was there, and I made this really shitty piece of art for Mark Maron that he ended up later posting on his Instagram, which is my claim to fame also. And it was a picture of a cat and him, and Mark Maron is saying, if you don't talk to your cats about catnip, who will? And the cat is saying, what the fuck? Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, and
it's always good when you can. And Mark Maron is, I mean, in all honesty, he is the curmudgeon that he plays on TV. So getting Mark to laugh is a good thing.
I know. I was proud of myself. Thank you.
So do you just to not to go too inside baseball, but do you know Dave Anthony?
I mean, I know who he is. I've never met him, but I do know who he is. Another little weird loop that I love about Dave Anthony is I am a My Favorite Murder fan. But if you're familiar with My Favorite Murder, you know Karen in Georgia. I am totally a fucking Karen. But Karen says all the time that Dave Anthony was, quote, her first comedy boyfriend when she moved to LA. And I just think that's so cute.
Yeah. I know Georgia and Karen really well. No, they're cool. And Karen. I mean, I like Karen and Georgia. I'm a Karen too. I think she is so funny and fabulous. They do a great show. But yeah, I can get into a little bit of the reasoning. But I used to have a podcast network called Feral Audio, and that's where that started.
That rings a bell to me.
Well, if you listen to My Favorite Murder in the first 100 to 120 episodes, that's
where I would know it from. Okay,
yes.
All right.
We also, Feral Audio. We also, and with Starburns too, I co-created this place with Dan Harmon, who runs from Rick and Morty and Community and all that stuff. So we've been around for a little while. We've had some pretty big hits, and we had My Favorite Murder till it got so big that it became its own thing, basically.
Yeah, no, they are like ridiculous podcast superstars at this point. Yeah. But bing, bang, boom. There you go.
Bing, bang, boom.
All right.
It was one of those just random opportunities that turned into a very successful relationship.
Well, when you say that you know Dave Anthony, I'm just wondering, like, when did you get involved in podcasting? Like, were you at that podcasting festival I mentioned, or were you not into the podcasting game yet?
I wasn't in the podcasting game then, or at least not all the way yet. I've been listening. My first show that I really got into was Keith and the Girl back in probably 2006, 2007. And when they were kind of like the biggest daily show that I knew of, and I really liked them. And I was a computer programmer. I actually moved to LA in the holiday season 2005. So this is my 15th anniversary here today. Within the next 2 weeks, and and so I would just sit there and I'd listen to podcasts while I'd program, and eventually I moved on from programming and making games into being a project manager, and then I started working in marketing and advertising, and we hired this company called Starburns Industries that does animation, made Rick and Morty, and does a lot of other stuff to do some ads for us. And we got along with the team there really well. And they said, hey, we got this really weird thing called Feral Audio, and we need some help monetizing it and promoting it. And so a buddy of mine and I just started coming in and helping them kind of figure out what all the businessy side of it, but also how to structure, like, how do we pay our talent? How do we make sure it's fair? And we'd sit with Dan and be like, all right, we want to make sure we do this, but we don't want anybody to feel stuck, because he felt very stuck by NBC when Community happened. And we tried really hard to just create the most talent friendly, but business viable network that we could. And so we delivered that to the team, and we delivered that to Dan and Dustin, my partner, or my former partner, and they looked at it and they kind of closed it and said, thank you very much. And we kind of looked back at them and said, you're not going to do any of this, are you? And they're like, well, we really don't know how. And they're like, well, can we help you? And we did. And they said yes. And so for about the last 5 years, I've been running a podcast network and helping out on an animation studio and doing that kind of stuff. But I did a lot of improv. I know comedy. I actually had a small business where I would train, because I've always had this want to make to figure out how to monetize comedians or help them monetize themselves, because I went to UCB and I'd see all these great writers, all these funny improvers, and they didn't know how to make money off of it. So I did this thing where I teach them how to make viral videos or user generated content for like Tide and
Oh my
Butterfinger and
God.
stuff.
I've been waiting to
And
meet you for 10 fucking years.
yeah, I
If,
just
oh
wanted to.
my
I
God,
really
the amount of content that I have made in my life that's just like my whole life of content is just the way of Vine. It was like that was cool for a second and then nothing happened with it. Like,
right.
oh man.
Yeah,
So
I always felt bad because I would have a regular job and I'd make a bunch of money, and then they would come. I'd invite my improv friends and they'd be broke, and I was like, "You're so much smarter than this. How do we do it?" And I just realized their funny brain and their business brain were kind of uneven. It's like a left and
oh
right brain thing.
yeah.
My
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 business
my
brain is so fucking broken. I don't have
yeah,
one.
my
Like,
business brain beats my comedy brain. And so one day I was in my level 4 class, like, I'm gonna graduate this. And then I realized, like, what am I gonna do? Because I don't have the time. I already make decent money so I'm never gonna be as good as these guys at comedy, but I'm always gonna be better at them at business. So maybe we could work together to make comedy and make the money at the same time. And that's really why I got into
brilliant.
podcasting, because I wanted to make my friends money and
Fuck
be
yeah.
part of comedy and
I can't
contribute
tell
in
you like
my own
how
way.
much I regret not like just going for it in 2012 and making the content, and then because a lot of people get held up by wanting to, like I say all the time, that C work is better than not participating at all, and people get
Yep.
so like caught up and I want to do the best work, and they don't just fucking start. And if
Hmm.
you just do C work and are mediocre, like you have the content, you can build on it and always improve. And now
Hmm.
everyone fucking has a podcast, and some of them are so fucking well produced that if you
Yep.
make some shitty thing on your phone with bad audio content, like you just can't compete. And back in 2012, I might have been able to get away with making a podcast on my phone. And I did make
Yep.
a couple episodes, and I called it Look What You Made Me Do. And it was
Nice.
basically about how like antisocial just fucking goes off and gets like passionate and pissed off about shit all the time. And it was just going to be like, solo host of me, like, listen to this crazy shit that happened in the line at the grocery store. And I made like 3
Yep.
episodes. I got some original music for bumpers. And then I sent it to a few of my friends and asked them for their opinion.
Uh-huh.
And they all said, this sounds too angry. I wouldn't listen to it. So then I gave up and I didn't make any more. And I like for years, I was like, I want to do a podcast. I need to do something. And then, like 8 years passed and now they're all so fucking produced. Do I make a YouTube channel? Like, how do I harness what I have grown into what I've always wanted to do?
Okay. Well, this is all great questions, and this is actually something I think it could really help out with for anybody who's interested in this part of this stuff. And you, first of all, do you see the irony in you have and just talking about your last talks and your other shows that you do, the kind of fucking weird toxic masculine bullshit where you can't make an angry show, but Mark Maron, that's all he is too angry, and he's making millions of dollars off his podcast.
Oh yeah, I see that irony all the time. Like, I mean, I'm 36 right now. So when in
Mm-hmm.
2012, I was what, like 28?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The point is, it's like I'm a different person now, and now I don't give a fuck. And
Right.
now I realize I should not have listened to my friends, and I definitely should have made that content. I could be somewhere totally different right now if I had made a
Yep.
podcast in 2012 and didn't listen to people telling me I sounded too angry. And I should have, you're right. I liked Mark Maron in 2012. I should have said, fuck you. You don't get podcasting. And
Yep.
done it anyway. But now that I am where I am and podcasting is where it is, I don't feel like I could just enter it at an amateur level anymore.
Okay. So the answer to that is it is definitely a lot trickier, and it's gotten even trickier in the last 2 or 3 years. And the thing that's really driven that is a couple things. Number one, agents are now involved in podcasting, but agents got involved in podcasting, so they started giving every celebrity B or C a podcast, right? And they wanted to bring everybody in. So now we're gonna get Oprah a podcast, we're gonna get Reese Witherspoon a podcast, we're gonna get, you know, every cast member who's ever been in the Vanderpump Rules of podcast. So it started really
Right.
like watering down everything. And Dave Anthony and his show, that show probably wouldn't have hit if it had released a few years later, because The Dollop's a great show, but it would have gotten water. It would have fallen behind anything that Malcolm Gladwell did or somebody else did, because they just didn't have that same name recognition, right?
Right.
So it is trickier now. It is a lot trickier now, and getting something to pop is a lot harder. You have to, there's a lot of promotion and marketing. There's a lot of ass kissing and hacking.
That's what's kind of fucking cool about Stereo right now, is that I was into podcasting early enough that I remember when it was still like quirky content that was sort of like public radio at 2 a.m, or like public TV,
Yep.
like it's like,
Yep.
people experimenting and shit. And now everything is so curated, it's very hard to find that. But on Stereo, there are like little gems of people who are making great content, who have a good following, who are doing something. And it's sort of cool with the little community that exists right now while it's new, that you can still find that without, like with podcasting, having to search through like literally millions of fucking shows to maybe find something new that's good. Because I never search for new podcasts anymore unless somebody recommends one. I used to look in the search in podcasts and just see like what's trending, what's good. But now, like, I have so many favorited that, and I know so many other people that listen to podcasts, that if I'm going to listen to a new one, it's going to be because someone I trust referred it to me.
Yeah, you're not alone. Almost everybody does that. It's really, it's one of the things that's evolved in podcasting, or it's one of the few things that hasn't evolved. The most people find podcasts from recommendation from friends or hearing the host on another podcast. We still, when we do marketing, when we do any sort of paid stuff, that's where all our money goes. I had Dane Cook. I have a show called Stuck at Home, and before that was called the Cliff Dorfman Show, where I was just kind of the co-host. Our first guest on that show was Dane Cook, and we had Dane, do a big Instagram post for it. He has well over 1 million followers. Whatever you think of Dane Cook, regardless, he had enough followers. It was the right audience, the right kind of show for it. I did some tests on the promotion because I didn't do our promotion until after the fact. 1 million followers, posted it all on Instagram, retweeted everything we did, was really complimentary about it. We probably got 12 listeners.
I haven't seen very many people successfully transfer over. It's really hard. Like, I have 4,000 on my TikTok, and I have only successfully gotten one person to come to Stereo from TikTok. So if it was easy to transfer like people to different platforms.
Well, I want to give you some tips on some new podcast stuff, but we got like 7 messages, and my buddy, one of the friends that actually got to come over, is like, answer your text. Okay.
Yeah,
that sounds amazing, because you don't want people coming on and being like, "Hey, how you doing, guys? Oh, poop dildo," and just leaving in like inappropriate voice clips. So yeah, that would be a much better way of doing it.
I have to tell you, okay, a little backstory. That is John Jay of 90 Day Fiance. He was on 98 Day Fiance. But I tried to leave Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew a message because I saw a love line years ago that involved a poop dildo. But for some reason, my first message didn't go through. And the very first message they played was just me yelling, "Poop dildo, never forget." And then they went off for 10 minutes about how people should be embarrassed of their behavior on this app, and I was mortified. And so he's referencing screening messages so dumbasses like me can't get through.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
I yelled poop dildo at Dr. Drew.
Oh. Well, you're going to have to play the next one. Something's wrong with my screen, so you're frozen, and all I could see is John Jay. So you're going to have to play.
All right.
Anti-social, of course I'm going to come in the room. How's it going over there? You doing good? Doing good? Starburns Audio. How's it going? We've never met. I guess they call me Peter Chat here. I'll follow you. Good stuff. Good stuff, guys. You're podcasting at the very beginning there, so. All right.
Oh,
Let's get some pie together.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes. Peter Chat, okay, for the record, he does not just do Peter Griffin. He is one of the most talented, if not, he's the most talented voice actor on this app that I've heard. He does like any voice, women, cartoons. He's amazing.
Oh, that's rad.
Hey, you two. Okay, so I'm going to ask on behalf of Antisocial here. I'm just going to throw the question out. If I am Antisocial and I'm in her position, I have 2,000 people following me on a certain platform. I've gained a solid following. I have a character. I have an angle. I have a lane, and I want to expand that. I come to you, Starburns Audio. What does the pitch look like? Talk to me about what the pitch looks like from Antisocial to Starburns Audio.
Why don't you just cut out the middleman, Ryan? What?
Well, Ryan or Antisocial, here's what I would say to that. Here's what the pitch should look like from you. One, it should have a basic description. I always like to find an angle. You know, with podcasting, you want to make sure you know if you're, you know, if it's an entertainment podcast, if it's a comedy, if it's arts, if it's true crime, you kind of want to know that. So kind of come at me what you want to come out, what you want to do. You know, and learning a little bit about you is a big important part. But I think the key to it for me is create a little bit of content to show me what you want this to look like. If it's a true crime podcast, it's going to probably take a lot of footwork, and you're going to have it's going to be scripted really well. And so I want to hear that you've scripted, and I can see that there's a lot of thought put into it, and that there's a point of view. If it's an interview podcast, there's a lot of interview podcasts. So it's really hard to kind of separate yourself from everybody, especially when you're having to compete against Conan O'Brien. So what I want to see with something like that is I want to see that you have an angle, or you're talking about something that is unique to you. So I'm not hearing the same conversation from the same people about the same shit. And that's what happens with a lot of these famous people podcasts now. And it's why they're not very interesting, because they don't tell you anything new. It's just the same recycled shit on every podcast. So I want to know that you have a thing that's going to draw out something new and different, or at least capable of it. And then 3, I want to know that you love podcasting, because it's true here on radio, and it's true here on a lot of stuff. And especially if you've got success in other places, it's a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to podcasting. And it takes a lot of work, but once you get there, the CPMs and the money that you can earn is pretty good in comparison to the number of followers you need. So I want to make sure that you love it enough that you're creating it not just because you want to make money off of it, but you're creating it because you're passionate about your subject and what you're talking about. But that you also still have a goal for monetization and growth. You need to have drive. That's not to say the other thing, but you do kind of have to have both of those things running at the same time. And if I see all that stuff and I listen to it and it makes me laugh or smile, or at least understand where it's coming from, that's what it takes as I look for new shows.
You know, I have a question. As somebody who's always wanted to make a podcast, but then the only time I really pulled the trigger and made any content and got a following or traction was when I went on Stereo, and I had the crutch of pushing that damn memo button. Like, how do I incorporate that live aspect into replayability? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or
absolutely.
is it just
I don't think so. It all depends on the type. And I think about this a lot. And one of the things that I do with with these shows is I post them up on my podcast feeds. So Miss Pat's show and the Sklar Brothers show and Paula Poundstone's Muller, She Wrote, they all, when they do their shows here, they post those episodes up on their feed. One is to kind of get people to come over to Stereo and hear it here because we want to get them here, but it's also so that there's good content in there, and it's different than what they do. And that's, I think, the crux of what I'm about to say. If that's your show, great. That's your content. Like, a lot of people create shows that don't have that aspect, so putting Stereo into it doesn't work because it's a fundamental change in their show, so it becomes a bonus episode or something a little bit more on the side. But if you're doing it and that's how your show is from the beginning, and your perspective is, hey, I'm going to do this, my guest is going to be random, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to have these little memos and all this piece, so it's a highly interactive show. You can do that. And one of the beautiful things you can do with a podcast is it's not live. So you could take that 4 hours and edit it down to 45 minutes, or you could do kind of a highly scripted, not scripted, but like a highly kind of compartmentalized or like segmented show. So when I do shows on stereo right now, I try and do something, I try and really get, we get to it really fast. We talk about what we're talking about. We answer the questions, but I try and keep it to an hour. I try to segment it into a 10-minute intro, a 20-minute interview, and then do news and questions. Not because that's how stereo should work, but that's how I'm used to working, and it helps me it helps my audience on the podcast understand what I'm doing. But if you do that from the jump and that's your podcast, that's great. I would recommend obviously doing some editing, making sure that your regular weekly podcast or daily podcast or whatever it is hits in a certain time limit. Most people who listen to podcasts don't really listen past the first hour, and I would even recommend with podcasts going shorter than that, 30 to 45 minutes. And I think you could create a highly successful one as long as they know if the topics don't go too far from each other. Like, they want you, but they also want to know that it's going to fit in that same genre. So I wouldn't put every single thing up, but like, if you have a certain one, yeah, absolutely, you could do it from here. There's a couple things I'll get into from a technical standpoint that I would recommend, but you just need to, basically, you need to plan it out. You want people and especially in the podcast world, a little more than the radio side of things, they like the ritual. They like to know that they're going to come in, people are going to say hi to them, they're going to hear their music, talk for a little bit, get to a question or two, then you go to this, and they have those little segments, and you do the dumb games.
There's certain things about certain podcasts that I'm thinking of that you're like, I can't wait till they say that thing, or like I'm waiting for like Elvis to meow or whatever it is, Yep,
exactly. Testing and iterating is what we do a lot of. When I do pilots for podcasts, we'll have, some people will do 2 pilots, some people will do 10. And whenever they say, like, who's my guest going to be for these pilots, like, make sure it's a friend, and tell them this one's probably not going to go live. And if it does, it's not going to go first. And they go, well, why? And it's like, because you don't put out, in podcasting or any other content, when you're first starting out and you're trying to get people to listen on that side, you don't put out the first thing you do. You put out the best thing you do within a window. And I think testing a couple of them will allow you to put that best thing out. And when it comes to building a following on there, because your focus is on stereo, you can grow it organically. And we'll talk later, but I can help you and show you how to market these things and how to get the best out of people. Like, as far as driving new listeners, it's the same thing. It's about talking to, the Dave Anthonys of the world, or the people that you're connected to, and having them tell other people about your show. But I think that you have a good voice. I think you have a great voice. Obviously, I wanted to talk to you because I'm very interested in what you have to say, and I think you're very smart and insightful in all these places. And if you took that and you just kind of pared it down to that, like I said, like a 30-minute thing, or did an hour and cut it, and had plans to cut it down to 30 minutes, you would have no problem having a very, very cool and listenable podcast that could gain traction in the more traditional sense.
Well, awesome. That's amazing to hear, because like I said, I've wanted to do it for years, and stereo is finally giving me a platform to try.
Yeah, I love it. I love stereo because it finally gives me a place where I can talk to people. I've been doing a live show and nobody ever responds to anything. And I get here, it's like message after message. I'm like, God damn, there's so many messages. Do we do a couple more of these messages, speaking of? Or do you got to jump?
Yeah, let's hit them.
Right. I appreciate you guys mentioning my band, which is Poop Dildo. Thanks so much.
Oh my God, Joe Ingram. I would be so honored if somebody named a band Poop Dildo after that.
It sounds like a great name for one. I mean, I feel like I want to say that I went and saw Poop Dildo at the CBGB before it closed, but that would be a lie.
Who doesn't want an excuse to say Poop Dildo? I mean, I think you should go tweet that tonight, and it'll just be a little inside joke. #stereo creator.
I can see the zine now.
Man, I think everything is just all about marketing, bro. You have to spread word. I mean, let's go, man. I'm down for it, man. You know what I'm saying? Legacy of Major, follow me, man.
Thanks, Legacy of Major. And Legacy of Major brings up a good point about marketing and how to market. I wanted to tell you about, and I want to tell everybody about. This is not a known secret, but it is something that people don't realize. If I was going to make a new podcast tomorrow and I didn't have any of the resources that I had today, and I had to start from scratch, and I don't have any friends in podcasting, I don't know other networks, and I was just going to do it by myself, the first thing I would do after I created my show and I was really happy with it, I got the art working where it is, I've got a launch date set, I've got all those things done. The first thing that I would do after that is I would look through the list of shows that is on that is in iTunes as kind of the top shows in my field, and I'd even go further. I'd scroll through that entire chart. I'd do some research, and I'd find shows that I really like and I thought lined up with what I'm doing. After that, there's a trick. You can actually see the email address for these shows in their RSS feeds. You have to open their RSS feed as a text file, but it's there. And I would email every show that I thought lined up or might be a little bit smaller or bigger and said, hey, I got this new great show. I'd love to be a guest on yours. I would love it if we could cross promote. I'll promote yours. I'll promote mine. You won't get everybody, but you'll get, if you ask 100 different podcasters, you'll probably get 15, 20 that would say, yeah, no problem. I'd love to, because they're generally nice people too.
And not all of them are, tip right there. That is like a $500 tip of free information. That is, I don't know why. That's an amazing fucking tip to open up the RSS feed, get their email, and just contact them directly.
Yeah. Don't go through the other stuff. They will, for real. It works. I still do this. This isn't something that's like I don't do. I mean, I have other access and I could call and buy ads and stuff, but there's a lot of times I love this show. I want to promote our show on this show, and I'll just look for it and I'll email them and I'll be like, hey, do you want to trade? And whether they know who I am or not, they're like, most of the time they either don't respond or they say yes. And it's the odds are pretty good that they're going to be interested. And that's not for big shows. That's for any show. It's because they're all creators too. They're all sensitive. They like to know that other people like them, and just like in anything else, they will do it for exchange. It is a good community overall. I mean, yeah. All right, let's see what we got.
First of all, thank you guys for talking about this. I feel like I know nothing at all about podcasting. It interests me as a voice actor who uses Peter Chat on here as a character to grab attention. I'm constantly trying to think of how to market myself. I've been doing YouTube since 2008, and I've only got over 1,000 followers. And I'm constantly rebranding myself, and I need to figure out what's the best method to push forward. Do you go in multiple directions on social media and try to grab a bunch of different people from different places? Or do you focus on one area and try to go for that? We could have another discussion about this some other time, or you guys can talk about it another time. That'd be great. But anyway, thanks again, guys. Appreciate all that stuff you're saying there.
Well, Peter, that's so funny. Well, I'd say two things. One, it is a much bigger chat, but I think, and if you want to talk later, we can. I think, Peter, I think that you would actually blow up on TikTok real fast with the kind of tweaks to what you're doing, because I learned this. I know some people over there too, and I've worked with some of the creators over there to learn how to kind of specialize on TikToks. If you want to talk about that, I think that's where you hit. But also, I can give you some tips on it. But I would say you focus on a couple. You find the one that one. I would find the one that makes you feel the most creatively satisfied as my priority, and secondarily, the one that it seems to connect with the most people the fastest. For me, that's, TikTok works out really well for me, but this also really works out for me because I understand audio. I don't understand YouTube. It makes me nuts. I have friends that do, and they're great at it, and they get big followings, but you focus on the ones that'll do that. But Peter, I really think that if with a couple things and the right concept, you blow up in TikTok. No sweat.
I think that's an amazing suggestion. As someone who uses TikTok all the time and is familiar with Peter's content, you get a fucking TikTok today.
Yep, 100%.
You guys had a moment.
I didn't reach into TikTok just because I thought that they would be short things and that it would push me into impressions territory, which impressions are fun, but ultimately, as a voice actor, I want to get original work and just kind of go in that direction. What kind of things would you suggest to do on TikTok other than trying to throw some impressions out? Because I feel like impressionists kind of get boxed into a corner because they can do a sound, right, but they're not acting, and that's the biggest difference. I use Peter on here because he's an idiot, and if I say anything stupid or whatever, if it doesn't make sense, it's fine. Hey guys, I just have hamburger farts. See, it doesn't matter.
You're right.
I thought about doing a podcast with the Simpsons. It's Homer, going over the episodes. So I don't know, ideas.
Well, here's what I'd say, Peter, and again, we can go into this a little bit bigger some other time, but I think that there are two things. One, I would want to know if you're a writer, because I think you could also do some short form or voiceover content for audio, do scripted audio like dramas. But two, I think that if you did it on TikTok, you can use your impressions and come up with a point of view. What are you talking about? It could be your impressions, but you could be talking about political stuff. You could talk about literary stuff. Find a secondary thing on top of the impressions that you want to focus on, that you want to drive to. And I think that's really more for building up your audience, so that you can kind of cross into other industries or other areas. Don't relegate yourself to the impression being the only thing you're delivering. Make the impression be the vehicle to which you are expressing a higher level of creativity.
There you have it. Excellent suggestions. Yeah. Peter is super.
Right.
His real name isn't Peter. I can't remember it, but he is super talented.
All right, everyone stop playing with your nipples for 2 minutes and make sure you follow these two, okay? All right. Thanks for the advice, and hopefully we'll get to chat sometime, and have a great night.
Of course. You're welcome, Peter. Well, here's what I'm going to say, and I think we should probably cut it. We still have 9. I keep playing them, and they keep coming. So I don't think we're ever getting through all these. I'm going to do a couple more, but I do want to say this, and if you want to do another talk, there's a lot of other pieces to this beginning podcasting that I'd want to talk to people about, and that includes how to make the artwork look the right way so you can stand out in Spotify and on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, cool.
Music, how quickly you start working. These things are also very important. Marketing is a step to this, but making yourself appear correctly and stand out is probably the first thing that you're going to do, and will help you across the board. So we can get into that stuff, a little more of the logistics of that. We can get into structure. The one thing that I didn't get a chance to tell you, but I really wanted to tell you about as far as doing this on there, is get an external mic that you can get your phone plugged into. I'm lucky enough, because I have a podcast studio, to have a Rodecaster Pro at my house, so I can plug into a whole board where I control sounds and I control audio, and I have a big mic. But there are I just got one. It's called an iRig, that you can plug into your phone that will let you put an XLR microphone, which is a more professional mic. And,
I'm going to DM you about this this week, because I actually have money to buy that right now. So I'm going to.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, listeners, follow Starburns Audio if you want to tune into his podcasting talks. He's got another one coming up.
Thank you guys, everybody, for listening. And I'm Starburns Audio. If you want to listen to some of our other podcasts, with starburnsaudio.com, we got a shit ton.
There we go. Well, is that it? Are you good to go?
Well, I wish we could have ended on a podcast thing. I want to. We got 4 more. I'm going to try. I'm going to give it a shot. Is that okay? Or do you got to go?
Go ahead. No, you're good.
I literally did just write the name of that movie down. I suggest that we watch it later tonight.
Right. That's how we're going to end it. We're going to end it on Jason cries a lot, and that'll be the subject of my next talk. How do we get Jason to cry? Brought to you by Jason, by Starburns Audio, Antisocial, and Mrs. Smitty. Thank you guys so much for joining and talking with us.
Have a good night. Thank you so much for the talk, Jason. Talk again later.
Anytime. All right. Sounds great. Thank you. Thank everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. That's the show for this week. I know the audio quality was crap, so if you stuck with it till the end, I want to thank you. I'm Antisocial, and this is the Antisocial Network. If you want more access to me, Antisocial, you can follow me on Instagram at the Antisocial Network, or catch me on the app Stereo. For 2 bonus episodes a month with personal stories like the time I met Molly Shannon while working at Disneyland, or the time I made Mark Maron laugh, subscribe to my Patreon for only $5 a month at patreon.com/the Antisocial Network. That's AUNTIE, like your mom's sister. I'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. Later.
But I'm antisociable, yeah. Antisociable.